I fly because it releases my mind from the tyranny of petty things. Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. Today we're going to continue talking about aviation weather services. And here's the battle plan. We'll do a scenario, give you the opportunity to share your flight brief. We'll get into our weather services talk, and then we'll do a quiz and assign some homework. Let's hit it. All right, let's watch this video and see what happens and what can go better. Let's turn this down first. All right, lights, camera, action. Airspeed's alive. Should have made our radio calls at this point. Hopefully our flaps up are up this time. Looks like we're having a better acceleration this time. 55 knots. There's 65. VY climb's going to be 79 knots. Looking good. And some things to keep in mind as we depart. We want to maintain runway heading until at least 700 feet above the surface before we make crosswind turns or departure turns out. Everything's looking good. Cool, so that was a lot better than our last departure. Our next radio call, let's say we're turning crosswind, if we're doing right traffic, would be Jefferson traffic, Cessna 172 Sierra Papa, turning right crosswind for runway 9, Jefferson traffic, or we could say we're departing the area to the east, or whatever we're doing. But remember, we always want to bracket the radio call with our airfield so that anybody in the area can know who you're talking to. Remember, a lot of airfields share a radio frequency, so we want to be clear about who we're talking to and what we're doing. All right, so take a minute now to share your flight plan brief. Where are you departing from? What's your destination? Remember that northwest craft is a good way to go, and then anything else that might be interesting or pertinent to the flight. And let's go. So let's continue talking about aviation weather services. Here is 1-800-weatherbrief.com. Go there, check it out, and see what the weather's doing today, and just study the weather throughout the week and see how things change and how forecasts, how accurate they are. Let's talk about radar weather reports. These are textual weather reports of weather radar observations. They include things like the type, intensity, location, and cell movement of precipitation. You can get in-flight weather from flight service stations on 122.2. They're generally available from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m., and they give you actual weather and thunderstorm activity along the proposed route. They're designed to be a continual exchange of information between pilots and weather briefers. They'll give you things like winds, turbulence, visibility, and icing information. Now let's talk about the wind and temperature aloft forecast. These will give us specific altitudes and the winds and temperatures for those altitudes. It's given typically in a 4-digit group with the wind direction with reference to true north. Remember, if you read it, it's true. If you hear it, it's magnetic usually. So when you read these temperature aloft forecasts, remember that it is true north. So you want to add a 0, and then the wind speed is given in knots. If you are at 3,000 feet or within 2,500 feet of a station, they're not going to give you a temperature because you can just look it up on the METAR or local weather. Sometimes it'll be given as a 6-digit group. The last 2 digits indicate the temperature in Celsius. Plus or minus will be given to tell you if it's above or below freezing, unless you're above 24,000 feet MSL, in which case it's always freezing or always below freezing. If you see 9900, that means the winds are light and variable. Sometimes you'll see a weird heading, like a heading of 730. Our compass only goes up to 360, so what the heck? Well, if the wind is greater than 100 knots, they're going to give you this weird heading, and you need to subtract 50 from that number and add a 0 to get your heading. So it'd be 230. And then you're going to add 100 to the speed number here. So add 100 to 6, it's 106 knots. And if it's above 24,000 feet, this 49 is assumed to be below freezing, so negative 49 degrees Celsius. So let's interpret these. 2725 plus 0, that's a heading of 270, speed of 25 knots, and it's at 0 degrees Celsius. 2113 minus 03, that's a heading of 210, 13 knots, and negative 3 Celsius. 2332 plus 02, a heading of 230, velocity of 32 knots, and 2 degrees above freezing, or 2 degrees Celsius. 731960 at 39,000 feet MSL. There we go. 73 minus 50, that becomes what? 230 with that added 0. 19 plus 100, that's 119 knots, and negative 60 degrees Celsius. Nice and toasty. Let's talk about significant weather prognostic charts. These are usually in 4 panels. The upper 2 panels are a forecast for the surface to 24,000 feet. One of them will be 12 hours, the other is 24 hours. The lower 2 panels, same thing, except they're just for the surface. My recommendation is go to 1-800-weatherbrief.com and go pull these up for yourself and go study them and see what the weather is doing in your area or in general, and just see how it changes throughout the week. Let's see. The upper 2 panels show if you see these symbols or these depictions here. This is what they mean. A solid line around an area means the ceilings are less than 1,000 feet, or the visibility is less than 3 miles visibility. That's IFR. A scalloped line around an area means the ceilings are 1 to 3,000 feet, or visibility of 3 to 5 miles. A broken line around an area, moderate or greater turbulence. A peaked hat tells you it's moderate. And altitude 180 means 18,000 feet. A dashed line means it's freezing level. Again, seeing these as a text file isn't really super helpful. Go to 1-800-weatherbrief.com and go study these on your own. I promise it'll make a lot more sense that way. Let's see. The lower 2 panels will show you highs, lows, and fronts and other significant weather. If you see an unshaded outline, that indicates precipitation covering half or less of the area. A shaded outline indicates precipitation covering more than half of the area. Again, much easier to see actually on the website. Go check it out. Here's some symbols that might be useful for you to learn. 3 dots with a little slant. That's thunderstorms embedded in an area larger area of continuous moderate rain. This means thunderstorms embedded in a larger area of intermittent moderate rain. So the number of dots is significant here. Here's continuous light to moderate snow and intermittent light to moderate snow. So typically the more dots or the more stars, the heavier the precipitation is. Let's talk about airmets and sigmets. These are pretty cool. Sigmets are hazardous weather that is hazardous to all aircraft. These are used to notify pilots en route of the possibility of hazardous flying conditions. A convective sigmet usually has to do with thunderstorms or tornadoes, embedded thunderstorms, or thunderstorm areas of an intensity level 4, area coverage of 40% or more, or hail. Basically, sigmets are nothing to mess around with. They're significant weather. And then convective sigmets is thunderstorms. Airmets are, actually, let's continue talking about sigmets. Severe or extreme turbulence, clear air turbulence, not associated with thunderstorms. Severe icing, not associated with thunderstorms. Dust storms, volcanic eruption. Basically bad weather. Nothing good about sigmets. There we go. Airmets are hazardous to small aircraft like us. Light aircraft really need to pay attention to airmets. This includes things like moderate icing and turbulence, visibility less than 3 miles, and ceilings of less than 1,000 feet, 30 knots of wind at the surface, and extensive mountain obscuration. Again, go check out 1-800-weatherbrief.com to go see what airmets and sigmets actually look like and practice interpreting them. Bam. Okay, so that covers it. Let's get into our quiz and knock it out. Every physical process of weather is accompanied by or is a result of a heat exchange. You got it. The development of thermals depends upon solar heating. ATC advises traffic 12 o'clock. This advisory is relative to your ground track. While on a VFR cross country and not in contact with ATC, what frequency would you use in the event of an emergency? 1 to 1.5. Who should not participate in the Land and Hold Short Operations Program? Student pilots. The boundary between 2 different air masses is referred to as a front. One of the most easily recognized discontinuities across a front is a change in temperature. If there is thunderstorm activity in the vicinity of an airport at which you plan to land, which hazardous atmospheric phenomenon might be expected on the landing approach? That's wind shear turbulence. During the life cycle of a thunderstorm, which stage is characterized predominantly by downdrafts? Dissipating. Which weather phenomenon signals the beginning of the mature stage of a thunderstorm? Precipitation beginning to fall. One in-flight condition necessary for structural icing to form is visible moisture. An almond or lens-shaped cloud which appears stationary but which may contain winds of 50 knots or more is referred to as a lenticular cloud. A non-frontal narrow band of active thunderstorms that often develop ahead of a cold front is known as a squall line. What is the expected fuel consumption for a 300 nautical mile flight under the following conditions? Pressure altitude of 3,000, standard temperature, and wind calm. We'll be over here. There's 3,000 somewhere between these two in a standard day, and somewhere between these two. If you need more time, go ahead and pause it. 22.3 gallons. The pitot system provides impact pressure for which instrument? The airspeed indicator. Radar weather reports are of special interest to pilots because they indicate the location, precipitation, along with type, intensity, and cell movement of precipitation. What service should a pilot normally expect from flight service? Actual weather information and thunderstorm activity along the route. What is absolute altitude? The vertical distance of the aircraft above the surface. When the term light and variable is used in reference to a winds aloft forecast, the coded group in wind speed is 9900 and less than 5 knots. Which in-flight advisory would contain information on severe icing not associated with thunderstorms? SIGMETs. How are significant weather prognostic charts best used by a pilot? For determining areas to avoid. A positive load factor of 3 at 100 miles per hour would cause the airplane to do what? Stall. That's right here. 100 knots or 100 miles per hour, 3 G's right here in the stall area. If 70 pounds of weight is located at point X and 210 pounds at point Z, how much weight must be located at point Y to balance the plank? And you can pause it here if you'd like. Remember to use your fulcrum as your equal sign. Here's the math, and 700 pounds. Under what conditions may objects be dropped from an aircraft? Love this question. If precautions are taken to avoid injury or damage to persons or property on the surface. SIGMETs are issued as a warning of weather conditions hazardous to which aircraft? Everybody, all aircraft. Bam. All right. So I would recommend making a new flight plan to a new airport that you haven't been to or that you haven't planned to. Keep reading the Airplane Flying Handbook, the Pilot's Handbook of Aeronautical Knowledge, and keep quizzing yourself. I would say 25 questions a day would be a good range to go for. I would love to hear any feedback you have from me. Let me know what you're thinking of, what you think of these presentations. If there's any way I can improve, I would love to hear it. And of course, here are my references. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you guys next week.